The zipper of my tent moved at 2 in the morning, and for a few terrifying seconds, I thought someone had followed us into the mountains. Then a trembling face appeared through the opening. It was Emily, my best friend's younger sister, soaked from the rain and clutching a small backpack against her chest. She looked terrified, but the words she whispered next frightened me even more. She needed my help, and she begged me not to tell her brother. I had known Emily since we were kids. Her brother Daniel was the closest friend I'd ever had, the kind of person who would drive 3 hours just to help you change a flat tire. Emily, however, had always been quieter. She carried her problems behind a polite smile and rarely asked anyone for anything. That night, while a storm hammered our campsite and trees groaned in the darkness, I could see that whatever had brought her to my tent wasn't a small problem. If you believe kindness can change someone's life and that people sometimes deserve a second chance, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. I moved aside and gave Emily a dry blanket, keeping a respectful distance as she explained what had happened. She had received a phone call earlier that evening from home. Her mother had collapsed at work and was being taken to a hospital in the nearest town. Emily wanted to leave the campsite immediately, but the road had become dangerous, her phone battery was nearly dead, and Daniel had fallen asleep after spending hours hiking through the rain. She was afraid that if she woke him, he would insist on driving through the storm himself. She knew how reckless her brother could become whenever someone he loved was in trouble. I told her we would wake him as soon as the weather eased. But she shook her head and revealed the real reason she had come to me. Earlier that week, she had discovered that her mother had been hiding serious financial problems. Their house was at risk, medical bills were piling up, and Emily had secretly taken a second job to help. She hadn't told Daniel because he had recently lost his own job and was already struggling to keep their family together. Emily believed she had to carry everything alone. That sentence stayed with me. She had mistaken silence for strength. At dawn, the rain finally softened. I woke Daniel and told him the truth. He was furious at first, not with Emily, but with himself. He couldn't understand why his sister had felt she couldn't come to him. Then he sat silently in the mud outside the tent, covering his face with both hands. For the first time, I saw how frightened he really was. We drove to the hospital together. Emily's mother survived the emergency, but the doctors said she would need months of recovery. The financial situation was worse than Emily had admitted. Their home was behind on payments, and the family business had almost collapsed. Daniel wanted to sell everything immediately, while Emily wanted to keep their mother's home because it was the only place that still felt like their family. The arguments began almost every day. I found myself caught between them, not as a judge, but as someone who could see that both were frightened. Daniel thought selling the house would save everyone. Emily thought selling it would destroy the last piece of their mother's life. Neither could see that they were actually fighting the same enemy, fear. One evening, I discovered an old box of documents in the family's storage room. Inside were photographs, business records, and a notebook belonging to Emily's mother. The notebook revealed something none of us expected. Years earlier, she had started a small catering business with almost nothing. She had written down every recipe, every customer, and every mistake. At the back was a list of people who had once helped her when she was struggling. Daniel wanted to sell the business equipment. Instead, I suggested they try one final thing. We could rebuild the catering business around the recipes in that notebook. Emily knew social media. Daniel knew repairs and deliveries. I knew enough about bookkeeping to help them organize their finances. It wasn't easy. There were weeks when almost nothing worked. Orders were late. Equipment broke. Customers complained. Emily nearly quit twice. Daniel worked until his hands were sore. Their mother watched from her recovery bed, worried that her children were sacrificing too much. Then something changed. A local restaurant tasted one of their dishes and placed a large order. That order led to another. Soon, people began asking for the family recipes. The little business slowly returned, not as the company it had once been, but as something new. Months later, their mother walked into the kitchen for the first time without assistance. Emily started crying. Daniel hugged her. And I stood quietly near the doorway, remembering the frightened girl who had entered my tent during a storm. 1 year after that night, the family was still together. They had kept their home, paid down most of the urgent debts, and turned the old catering business into a thriving neighborhood service. But the biggest change wasn't financial. Emily finally stopped believing she had to solve every problem alone. Daniel finally learned that protecting someone didn't mean making every decision for them. And I learned that sometimes the most important thing you can give another person isn't money, advice, or a perfect solution. Sometimes it is simply a safe place to tell the truth. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach someone who may be silently carrying a burden of their own. And before the ending, I have one special request. Comment, "Nobody should carry it alone," if you believe asking for help is a sign of courage, not weakness. Years later, whenever our old camping group talked about that storm, Daniel would joke that it had been the worst camping trip of our lives. Emily would smile quietly. But I remembered something different. I remembered the zipper opening in the darkness, a frightened young woman whispering that it had to remain a secret, and the lesson that followed. Some secrets protect people. Others only protect their fear. And sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is finally step out of the darkness and let someone else stand beside them.